guys, welcome to my channel. My name is Franca and I'm glad you're here. Today I'm going to be recommending around 20-ish books or answering 20 questions about books and recommending some of my favorite books. This is also known as like the newbie tag on Booktube, which I probably should have done before I started making book videos, but it's alright, we're doing it now. Question number 1 is, what are the books that got you into reading? And I'm going to not start from way back when I was little. I'm gonna start this year. So the book that got me back into reading this year was A Court of Thorns and Roses by Sarah J. Maas. One of the girls on my hockey team was listening to this audiobook when I was in the car with her, and I was like, oh my god, like what is this story about? And she started on book 2. I was like half listening to this audiobook and I was like, oh my god, like I kind of want to read that book. When I came home from break, I literally bought this book and I read it and I absolutely loved this. I'll try and link like reading vlogs to as many of these as I can that I have up. I will also have them linked all down below for you. So this one is definitely the one that got me back into reading this year. I'm sure literally all of you have heard of this book. I feel like this is a lot of people's favorite books, but it is definitely one of mine and I 100% recommend it. It's about like fairies essentially, and like war, all that kind of stuff, and they have to like save the day or whatever. The next question is, what genre of books do you read the most? I would say I definitely love fantasy books. I have a lot of like romance books on my shelf. I still don't feel like I like 100% love that genre, but I have a lot of them. And then the last one I'd say is like murder mystery or like thriller kind of books. I don't quite honestly know what the difference is between those genres. They're the same thing in my head. Question 3 is, what genres do you read the least? And I would say literary fiction. I don't think I've ever picked up or looked at a book that was literary fiction. Number 4 is a book you tell everybody about, and that for me is The Guest List by Lucy Foley. I love this book. It's like a murder mystery, right? They get like trapped on this island for like a wedding and the groom is offed, but literally every person who was invited to this wedding is a suspect, and they all have like different reasons of why they would commit this murder. So you're trying to like figure out who did it, but like everyone is a suspect. And I personally absolutely love that, because every time I was like, something would happen, I'm like, oh, it was this person, and then something else would happen, I'd be like, no, it's this person. And honestly, this book kept me on my toes the entire time, and I absolutely love this book. Number 5 is, what book have you reread the most? And that is definitely Flowers in the Attic by V.C. Andrews. Obviously, you can tell this book is like beaten up. It's been through the ringer. I've had this book since like grade 8 or 9 or something like that. Like, I've had this book for a really long time. She's really old. She's been beaten up. For the longest time, this was the only book like I had, to be honest. When I was in school, I used to read books from like the library, and I wouldn't like buy books per se, and this was one of the only books I like actually had a physical copy of. I especially love the first book. This has the first and second book as part of it. I love the first book just because it's like so twisted and dark that I'm like, how did V.C. Andrews like come up with this? Like, it's crazy. And I feel like it pulls at your heartstrings a lot, because you're like, oh my god, like how could a mother do this to her kids? Number 6 is a book that you didn't like but everyone loved, and that has to be It Ends With Us by Colleen Hoover. Obviously, I feel like there's a lot of hate towards Colleen Hoover on the internet. I think this book originally was on Wattpad, and it feels like a Wattpad book, and it reads like a Wattpad book, but also to be honest, I really hated the main character. I'm so sorry. I hated Lily Bloom, but like her character was just so unlikable. I feel like I really couldn't root for her, because it was like, I kind of hate your guts. So didn't really like this book. If you did, that's completely fine. I personally didn't like it. Number 7 is a book that deserves more hype, and that would be Carvel. I feel like I hear everybody talking about like ACOTAR, Fourth Wing, all of those like big books, and I heard a couple people mention Carvel, but like not enough, because this book I really enjoyed this book. I love this book. I felt like I was in like a fever dream, but I feel like I was in a fever dream and I kind of loved it, because I was like, what the heck is going on? I feel like I was brought into this magical random world that I knew nothing about, and I was like slowly learning about it. I'm like, what is going on? What is that? What is happening here? So I do think this book deserves a little bit more hype, but I can see why there are people that like wouldn't like it because it is a little bit confusing. But to be honest, really loved it. It was such a good book. I think also another reason I really like this book is because I've never read anything quite like it. So I really enjoyed this book. Number 8 is a book you read the fastest, and this isn't particularly one that I like, but we have Happily Never After by Lynn Painter. My coworker gave me this book and she read it and I think she gave it like a 3 or a 2 stars. She didn't really like it. And I was like, yeah, but I think the idea is so cute. I loved the idea of this book, like objectors at wedding, but I was very let down by the actual contents of the book itself. But I think another thing is because this book was so short and so easy to read, I think you aren't given enough time to like fall in love with the characters falling in love. And I know I've said this about a couple books in previous videos. It's a standalone. There's nothing else to see this couple interacting or anything like that. And since it's such a short book, it kind of like this happens, this happens, this happens, this happens. You know what I mean? And there's no real like feeling it gives you. So I think I gave this a 3 star. It was an alright book. Wasn't bad. I just didn't love the characters. I'm realizing now that I messed up the questions. Number 7 was a book that definitely deserved the hype. Number 9 is a book that you think deserves more hype, and that is actually The Family Across the Street by Nicole Trope. I thought this book was crazy. I like when like thrillers, I assume this is a thriller, I'm not entirely sure, but I like when books have the multiple point of views. These point of views, some of them were very strange, and I was like, what does this have to do with literally anything in this book? But then the further you get along the book, they start to intertwine. You're like, oh my god, this is why this person has a point of view in this book. Also, I think the nosy neighbor loved her. And I think as someone who is also nosy, that I just love this book. 10, a book you usually recommend. And that is the Bridgerton series, not necessarily The Duke and I, but the Bridgerton series in general. This is by Julia Quinn. I love the Bridgerton TV series, but I did like, not this book in particular, but the rest of the books I did really enjoy and I love them. So I feel like if you're a big fan of Bridgerton, you should definitely read the books. The first 2 seasons I watched without reading the books, and the 3rd season I watched after reading all the books. So I knew that things weren't happening the way they were supposed to, and I think that kind of ruined season 3 for me because I was like, oh my god, I love these books so much. And then they just kept changing things and I was like, what is going on? Like, this is not the same. But yeah, I still love Bridgerton, so that is there. A book you thought you'd hate. I have Bride by Ali Hazelwood. I didn't think I was gonna like this book because like I didn't hear a lot of people talking about this book, and then randomly I heard a whole bunch of people mention it, and then I was like, I saw it at Costco and I was like, okay, I'm gonna get this book. But then I didn't hear about anybody talking about this book ever again, and I know Ali Hazelwood is known for like her science romance books, so I was like, oh my god, like maybe this book is just so bad that like no one wants to read it. So I was thinking I was gonna go into this book and not liking it. It's a werewolf vampire like romance kind of thing. It gave me like hardcore Wattpad vibes, and unlike It Ends With Us, I actually did like this one. I thought it was fun. I also thought like the story was interesting enough on its own that you kind of like look past the Wattpad part. Like obviously there was some plot holes and you're like, oh, what happened to that? And it's never mentioned, but overall, I did really like this book. It made me feel like I was like reading Wattpad books for like the first time again, and it was kind of funny. Number 11 is a book that made you cry, and that is definitely After the Fire by Robin Gabby Fisher. If you don't know, this book is based on true events. It is about a fire that happened in a dorm room in Seton Hall University, I think. Yeah, Seton Hall University. It's about these 2 guys, Sean and Alvaro. They came to my college to do like a talk, and they read out like a sentence or 2 from the book, and I thought the writing was so beautiful that I like actually got the book. This book is, I forget where they signed it. This book is signed by both of them, which I thought was really cool. And their story is just so unbelievably sad. It's a book that I think like everyone should read. And it is about like important safety. And I feel like their story is just so sad. And after hearing them talk about their story, reading the book just like brings you to tears. After the Fire definitely made me cry. Number 13 is a book you wish you could read again. I took this more as like maybe a book you wished you could read again for the first time, more so. And for that, I have The Cruel Prince by Holly Black. This is also another fairy kind of book. I know everyone calls them fae, but it sounds weird to me. I like the idea of fairy better. It sounds like a more like chill version. So we're gonna go with fairy. Honestly, I love this book because I like the titles and I like how they like play a role in like what happens in the book. Like obviously, the cruel prince, obviously someone's mean. And then there's the wicked king, he does something really bad. And then the queen of nothing, she is a queen, but she holds no power over anyone. And I really like that. So I do wish I could read this again for the first time. Number 14 is a book that has your favorite character. And I couldn't tell you a specific book because I feel like a lot of the characters in the books I've shown you, I do really like. So I can't particularly pick a favorite because I have too many favorites. Number 15 is kind of the same. It's a book that you wish you could live in. And honestly, quite honestly, a lot of them. A Court of Thorns and Roses, love to live in that. Fourth Wing, love to live there. Literally, most of all, Carvel, love to live in that world. So many of them. I feel like a lot of the fantasy worlds I would rather live in just because it's not like modern day kind of thing, but I would love to live in those fantasy worlds. Number 16 is a book that could get you out of a reading slump, and for that I have A Good Girl's Guide to Murder. This book I think is also considered like a YA young adult book. It's not like crazy hard to read, and it isn't that big of a book. I think it was like 300 and something pages. There's only 3 books in the series, so it's not like A Court of Thorns and Roses with 5 or Throne of Glass that has like 7 or 8 or a whole bunch of books. Throne of Glass has 8 books. So it's nothing like crazy, and those books have like 500, 600, like they're thick books. So this one's like a chill read. So yeah, I would recommend this to get out of a reading slump. Number 17 is a book that everyone should read. And for that, I have A Dog's Purpose by W. Bruce Cameron. I think everyone should read this book who has a dog because it is the cutest little story ever. I think it's so fun reading from like an animal's perspective, even though it's not an animal's perspective because it's written by a human. But like, you know what I mean? Like the thought of like, it's cute. It's a cute book. I think everyone should read it. Next, we have number 18, a book that would make a great movie. I don't know if anyone's in the talks for making this book into a movie, but it is Fourth Wing. I feel like this is like an adult version of like How to Train Your Dragon. Number 19 is a book you wish everyone would read, and for that I have The Nightingale by Kristen Hanna. Obviously I still have a sticker on this because I haven't read this physical book yet, but I've read this book so many times in like elementary and high school, and I love it. It's about World War II, and honestly it's like such a good book. And I haven't reread it yet now as an adult, but I remember like in school, like I love this book. Like I used to tell everyone like this book is so good, like you have to read it. And then lastly, a book you'll never forget, and that would be The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I will never forget this book, mostly because like I read the title and I was like, oh, she definitely is like offing all her husbands. I don't read the back of books. I want to be surprised when I read the book. So I didn't read the back. I had no idea what it was about. It's about this famous girl who had 7 husbands. The twist in the book was crazy. There was like a major twist. At least for me, there was a major twist because I thought she was going to murder all of them and she didn't murder a single one. So it was a twist for me because I had no idea. I had this very strong idea of what this book was going to be, and it was the complete opposite. But also there was another like smaller twist which I thought was absolutely crazy that I'm not even going to mention because it was so shocking, and I think the fact that I so strongly thought this was going to be a murder mystery and it wasn't is going to live rent-free in my head for the rest of my life. Those are all the questions. Let me know what your answers to some of these questions would be down below in the comments. And with that said, thank you guys so much for watching this video. I hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, feel free to leave a like and comment down below. If you didn't, feel free to leave a hate comment. I'd love to hear your opinion, and I will see you guys tomorrow.